If you have ever wondered, how is it that a good God can do so much evil? And that has even made you doubt that God exists, perhaps our publications will be very useful to you. If you think that a God of love kills children, women, men, and the elderly indiscriminately, and is still a God of love, if you can reconcile those ideas in your mind, the things we post could cause you great upset and anger. If you conceive reasonable doubts that what is written in the books of the Bible may contain errors and additions made by the will of men and not necessarily by God, these publications can give you light and a way to have a friendship with God. But, if you are not able to conceive that the text of the Bible is something subject to errors and human manipulations throughout the history of the books that compose it, these publications can cause you great rejection and anger. Perhaps they will still be useful to you, but with that caveat. We are convinced that God is always good, with everyone, that God does good and never evil, that God does not kill human beings for any reason and under any circumstances, that God loves human beings without any restriction, that God's plans are to rescue every human being without exception, for eternity. That people who may be bad today, tomorrow will be transformed by the power of the love of a God of eternal mercy into good people, and that all sins of all people through Jesus Christ are forgiven. That God does not hold a grudge because someone sins, but rather sees us as little children who do not know what they are doing, but who are tied to sin through another being, with less power, but with enough to keep us imprisoned for a time. We think that Satan pretends to be God to do evil, to deceive men, to make them abuse others, so that they hurt each other in his name and without his name as well, and that this deceit of that false God is reflected in life, history, and is also embodied in the biblical scriptures. That in the biblical text and other texts considered sacred by each people, there is the influence of two gods, one the true one, Jesus Christ, and the other the false one, Satan, of which both claim to be the true God, but we know that only Jesus is. For this reason, and in this we explain, for example, the presence in the Old Testament of a God similar to Jesus, who has eternal mercy, eternal love, gives food and drink to both the just and the unjust, and another Jehovah who is wrathful, homicidal, which inspires genocide, evil, revenge, exclusion of minorities, slavery, abuse of power, mistreatment of women, and etc. We have therefore come, through the teachings of Jesus and the testimony of his Spirit, to separate divine inspiration from satanic inspiration, which pretends to be divine as well. We have understood that every human being is subject to these influences in his life, that there is not a man on earth who was not deceived by Satan at various times, which is reflected in the writings of men, of course, but that God, the God that Jesus showed, also inspires in acts, decisions, and writing, always for good and never for evil. This is for those who can receive it, for those who are ready to assimilate it, because there is time for everything. This is natural. We have all learned and continue to learn, each according to their own way and in their own time, to see a little more of the truth with the help of God without reaching it at all, because we are human and we are still in the world, which limits us. God has blessed you in a lot, to start with life itself. This is Cristoblog.